just about Theodore last time he was out there. Today it's just a one-off for his illness.
Yeah, he wasn't feeling great yesterday, so we decided to hold him out. And today he felt better, so he showed up, and his call to go on the ice felt well enough to skate, and he did. So that's a good thing. Hopefully it's just behind him. And gave Corsi an opportunity to get in the lineup. It was him or Huddy. Obviously a tough decision, but would have been good with either one. And I thought Corsi played well as the game went along. He got better, so good for us to have depth there. But I would anticipate Theo, assuming nothing else happens between now and Friday, would be back in there.
You've always talked about staying ready side of things. Can it be more difficult to get that message across to a younger player?
Yes, 100%. Huddy probably went through it before, if he was in that position. I know when I got here he was, and we sort of had to remind him that it's a lousy part of the job when you're the extra guy, but when you get an opportunity to go in, like, we can't sit there and say, well, you need 10 games to get going because you haven't been, you know what I mean? Like, that's not the way the league works. The other teams don't care. They're coming at you 100 miles an hour. So you have to find your way to stay mentally sharp. That's a little bit on you. Physically is on us to make sure they get their reps in practice. And that's the tough part, because you're grinding on them in practice and drills that are, when we do box outs, for example, right? Some battles in front of the net. It's much more important for those two, because they're not getting the live reps every second night that Petro is or Hanny, and we want to build it into everybody, but that's where we have to be on them. And as a player, and I was in that spot a little bit 100 years ago, it's like hard for the coach to be sort of on you on that. It's like, oh, come on, I'll be ready to go, especially as a young guy. I know it's a game, but it's not a switch you can turn on and off. That's the challenge for a younger guy. And it's why a lot of teams, quite honestly, don't like having a younger guy in that position. But at the end of the day, Corsi requires waivers, and he's a valuable piece, and we, what I mean? So there's a little bit of that trade-off, and he's going to have to meet us halfway with the coaching piece versus his mental sort of preparation every day. Like, for him, a lot of practices are games. They're games for him. Like when we practiced Friday in Florida, that's a game for him. Whereas other guys are going between Tampa and Florida and get ready. You know what I mean? For him, he's got to have his intensity level up because he's not getting the game reps. And that's a challenge for a young guy. I think older guys get used to doing that and understand that that's just what's required.
So how much are you evaluating that in practice when you're looking at guys who are on the bubble?
Well, I don't do as much as the assistants that coach that position, because I've got the whole practice to keep coordinated and running and making sure the pace is up. Where's our execution level with our pace? Is it good enough? And we went through some of that Monday. We had to get our pace going. I didn't like it on the road trip, and pace, conditioning, execution has to be higher, and I thought we put in some good work Monday on that. I think it reflected some of our start the other day, so let's keep building on that. I think the position coaches, that's where I go to them after. Johnny, how are the two guys? Because it's typically been Huddy and Corsi. We haven't had a lot of extra forwards. And it's like, yep, they're working at it. And it's hard, like days like today when other people are off and resting, they've got to reset, especially Huddy, right? That didn't play last night. At least Corsi got a taste. So there's an appreciation and a respect for those guys that are able to do it every night and bring something when they go in. Ben Hutton's been terrific at it for us. We're grateful to have a guy like that that's ready to go and has a good attitude. He still loves the game, even though he's not playing, and probably feels that it was just as much his opportunity as Corsi's. And that's what we have to build into Corsi if he doesn't play, or a younger guy that could happen up front here soon if, when Carly returns to the lineup.
Every player is flawed to a certain extent. And there's an expression that when you're watching the same people all the time, sometimes all you see is their warts. How do you avoid falling into that trap?
Well, coaches do fall into that because we're correctors, right? So we always notice the things that aren't going well, so we want to fix that. And then you lose the appreciation and sometimes you learn that when you go to another place. Or your team is eliminated and you're watching playoffs and you realize, wow, I thought those players were all, they've got the same, you know what I mean? So I think you just have to recheck yourself, certainly as a coach, and appreciate what they bring and try to find that balance. But I mean, it's human nature to want to fix things that aren't right, and you take for granted times the things that are. So that's having people around you to kind of reset you on that is good every once in a while for them. Hey, this player last night did a really good job on the boards, but, you know, like, I know we've been on him, and it's like, well, yeah, we have been on him, and, you know, then you got to make sure as a coach you're pointing that out, because players can't only hear the negative stuff. They need both, and that's how I look at it from a coach.
Is Schwick only a center, or could he play the wing?
Well, that's a good question. I've been told he's played predominantly center. That's where he excels. So could he play the wing? A lot of centers have moved to the wing and done just fine. But adjustments are, board work, stopping and starting. You don't get to sort of keep your speed as much, and you're working outside the dots as much as you are less so inside the dots, and centermen are used to those areas. So that would be something, a question for the people that scouted him more than I could answer you, because we weren't planning on playing him on the wing. Could there become a day he does? Then we'd have to do a deeper dive, and then sometimes it's trial and error.
There was an obvious weight lifted off the shoulders of Alexander Holtz last night when he scored, but I'm curious, is it a weight off your shoulders as well when it's a young player who you know is frustrated?
I mean, that's where you got to guard against. It's like Alex, you scoring doesn't determine whether we win or lose every night. It can from night to night. In a one-goal game, yes, you'd like to finish. It was an important goal for us. We extended the lead early in the third after giving up a goal late in the second, right? So you don't want that momentum shift. But he had a breakaway in Washington, 2-on-1 in Tampa, rebound chance. I don't know how Bobrovsky stopped it in Florida off Schwinn's attempt. So there were some grade A chances there for him. A crossbar against St. Louis or Anaheim on the power play, some really good looks for him. It seemed like every night he was getting a grade A. So I think for him it was important he scored, but for me as a coach, I'm like, okay, the puck's finding him, he's doing things well. We have to make sure he doesn't cheat, because that's what young players will do. They'll go home at night and they'll think, I can't score, I got to score. Now they forget how to back check, they forget about stick details, checking details, being one of 12 forwards on the ice helping us win, and then eventually those shots will go in. He's got a good shot. He's scored goals in this league. You get grade A's every night. It's just a bit of the law of averages, right? They're going to go in, and last night it did. And hopefully the next one, again, and maybe 2 of the next 3 go in. All of a sudden he's got 3 goals in 10 games, and he's not worried about it. We're not talking about it. But for me, it's about the details. I just feel young guys can get caught up in only one thing.
So does that make it easier for you now that he has that weight off?
Sorry, yes. Well, it's easier for me because some of what we've been talking about then starts sinking in, and I want to reward him for playing well. I don't want to reward him just for scoring the odd goal. That's how I look at young players. Now there's always the exception, one guy that goes out there and, you know, he's scoring like a machine, but, you know, I wouldn't put Alex in that category. Maybe becomes that player, but, you know, he's not there yet, and most young guys aren't. And they do have to understand that what their value is to the team when they're not scoring, how to build a foundation to stay in this league and play through ups and downs but still help your team. And that's a tough sell sometimes, especially for a guy that's scored at all different levels and values that more than anything. So
There was a stretch during all that PK time. Samsonov made a save, whistle. Hanifin rubbed his head. Samsonov.
I may have missed that part.
No, I can describe it, then ask a question. Then Samsonov kind of gave White Cloud a pat on the shoulder, and then everybody kind of gathered all around him, and it was like they were all kind of encouraging one another. I know you don't want to take penalties, but he's a new player, and everybody's getting used to him. To see them come together like that, is that a positive?
Well, of course. Is that when it went off the end boards at the tail end of it and they shot it back out front? Because I know there was certainly the crowd's into it. We're into it. I think that was the end of Nick Hagg's 4-minute minor. So I think there's a sense of accomplishment for anybody on the ice and the guys on the bench who have killed it too, right? Because it's a lot of the same guys. So that's camaraderie. That's team building. It's taking pride. I think teams with good PKs, Gary, go a long way, and you got to have pride and value in that, and it's up to us to build some of that into certain players. That's why we try to manage, is it the top guys always killing versus guys that maybe don't some of the grunt work, and that's always been a good question for how you build your PK. So yes, I think it's really important for our team, and our PK is an area we need to get better at. We spent some time on it, Johnny and I, on Monday talking through it. And we did a walkthrough on the ice. We don't typically do that in a game day. So to see the guys grab onto it obviously means they want to take pride in it too. And I think it had some effect, us revisiting it a little bit and going back to sort of square one on it and then seeing the results. And you're always going to need, sooner or later, no matter how good you are, you're going to need a couple saves on it, right? Because you're down a guy and you got to give something up. And I think the guys appreciated those stops.
Last one, sorry, Gary, he asked you about seeing players' flaws. You talked about giving them credit when they're improving. You made a comment about someone being better on the walls last night. Was that just an example, or did you have someone in mind?
No, that's an example of guys that were like the young. It seems like
Saw anyone last night?
the younger guys, like it's harder for them because they're not. It's not that they're not men, but they're not as strong. They're not man's strength yet, and some of that's what wall battles are. Watch Mark Stone on the walls, right? And and it could have been Pav, for example, because we want Pav's game to be better. He's a bigger guy. Use your body. Barber's very good at it, but he's been in the league a bit. So I don't know if it was one specific play, but we feel that's an important area of the ice. That if you can control the boards, it makes it easier on your D for breakouts and then getting pucks into the middle. Boards to middle with good speed, and you're drawing people outside those areas. If you can win those battles, I think it opens up your transition game. So that's the biggest reason why. But I don't know if there was one guy last night or not, to be honest with you.
No, it's okay. It was a late call.
That's all right. We got time. Lunch can wait, Ashley.
You talked the other day about
Not yet. Sit tight.
you talked the other day about when Carlson gets back and trying to figure out how you want to piece the line together. I'm curious, when he does get back, what are the pros and cons of sticking with the top line the way that it is, and how did you navigate that in Boston?
Well, sticking with the top line. To me right now is they're doing a lot of good things and they're driving a lot of our offense. So to put Carly in and say, well, I don't know if that's fair to Carly. Right now, there's two sides of that, right? He hasn't played really since last May. So there's going to be some rust. So do we break up a line that's really going well to help him right out of the gate, or do we let him get his traction, playing with other wingers and ease him into it? Now, it makes it easy last night when Hurdle's line goes off, right? So now you got two lines, so now you can really manage Carly better. So that helps if the rest of the team's going. We're starting to see Nick Waugh again, his line going, right? Coley and Pearson, they're in behind people, whether it was Howie or Pearson, whoever's on it. They're getting to their game a little, now too. So they're back together. So that would be the conversation we'd have on what we're going to do with Carly and how we're going to manage his wingers. And what happened in Boston was always a challenge because that line was very effective night in, night out. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, but should we have balanced it better? We had a center in David Krejci. If we take a right winger, say Pasternak, and move him down, does that make us a better team? Well, then you had Bergeron and Marchand. Who's going to go up there and be able to play against top pairs every night and manage and function, right? You need someone to replace, you need a player to go up there and give you, maybe not be a Pasternak, but you need someone to be able to be a top-line winger. That's a little bit of the conversation, too. You can't just put anybody there. Now, all of a sudden, the line doesn't function, and you got two perennial Hall of Famers like, hey, you know what I mean? Those are the conversations you have with players. And around the league, teams go through it. I know that McDavid-Draisaitl is always a topic of conversation, together or apart, so I'm sure the coaching staff there always has to navigate through that. So I think you see a little bit of both. Now, once Carly's going, would we drop Stoney down or whoever it plays out? Probably Stoney, right? Because Barbie and Jack have been together. If it's best for the team, absolutely, we'll do it. And balance, I think, does win in the long run. In the playoffs, if you can do that. But we're still in October, so you got to get to the playoffs. So that's the second part of that. If you have this great balance, but it's not enough to get you there, is that the right move? Or is it just kind of line drive, you at least get you there, then sort through it? So I think those are all things coaches go through. And we were fortunate 2 years ago, we had guys we were able to put up there were more depth pieces, like Howie, right, goes up, plays with Stevie, like he complemented very well. Amadio, you know, and so Barbie at the deadline goes in and complements. So we had those pieces to go in and kept the lines going. So that's, I told you, the second part of it. You have to have those players that can still complement those lines and be able to function at, you know, on top minute sort of lines and against good people. So that's something you either build or you have already, but that's, you know, a big part of how you construct your lines.